Look, there's a basic truth to government. If you have something that the government can't take, it will bend all of hell to take it away. It will find the thing to take. Hey, y'all says, please react to the DOJ trying to take Alex Jones's cat. Wait, what? This is harassment. Alex Jones says the DOJ wants to seize his $2,000 cat. That is harassment. Fuck you. Fuck off. What's the Department of Justice going to do with a cat? What are they going to do?
This is Mushu, my 5-year-old daughter named Mushu this 2 years ago. I mean, what, you want my children next? You want to like sacrifice my children or something? And this is the reality that we live in here in America in 2023. Justice Department hearings with people laughing in the background when they say, we want your cat.
The reason that they had to write down our very basic liberties of, yeah, you can speak and worship a God of your choice, is because they knew that if they didn't write it down, government would say, well, no, I mean, why could people speak? Of course they have basic rights, but speech, I mean, that's weird. Like, why would anyone talk? Why would anyone want to worship a God that's different from the state issued God? They had to write down the most basic things. They had to write down that they couldn't just put an entire battalion of soldiers in your house. Like, they had to write that down. It seems silly to us because it's like, wait, how could a government just order a bunch of soldiers to come live in my house? They had to write it down because they're so scared that government would do that, because if government did that, then they have a secret police network in every home. They have a listener in every home. That was the fear that the founders actually had. So you have to understand that basic thing. Attorney-client privilege is one of the absolute most sacred privileges that exists. It is better than spousal privilege. It is better than doctor privilege, clergy privilege, any other privilege. It is the most protected, sacrosanct thing. And the reason it is because all the people enforcing it are generally lawyers. But government hates it because they go, I have the bad guy. Remember, the framing of the mind of a prosecutor is they have the bad guy. No matter if they're right or wrong, the guy is bad enough. And they all know that all of us are bad enough, that the government can prosecute any of us for anything. Like, if they could just get the information, they know we've screwed up because we're anti-government, and we being anybody. So if they can pierce attorney-client privilege, they will move hell to do it because they hate it. It is a thing that the government has trouble touching. Now, the problem in this case is exactly what you're saying. These seem like kind of mundane questions between, I mean, what we know of them, between a client and an attorney. Client calls up. Yeah, so hypothetically, if I had like a bag of drugs that I needed to get rid of, like right now, because there's police lights following me, hypothetically, like, what's the best way to get rid of those drugs or to like hide them? And the attorney's like, well, you know, I mean, maybe if you have a bag of drugs in your car, like there's like a compartment or something, or you could just shove them in your butt really far, or you could throw it out the window while they aren't looking, like some sort of like, do like a high-speed chase, throw it out the window while he's busy chasing you so he didn't see, and then like pretend that you didn't know he was behind you because you're deaf. So when he comes up, be like, hey, like you do something, right? Like, come up with
not a conversation you had before at all.
No, like so like the attorney's like trying to help them come up with some sort of scheme to do that, like, but like, yeah, hypothetically, but the attorney isn't actually colluding to commit a crime. So there's a different thing where you say, look, Joe, I'm running a cash business. It's a nail salon. I'm Vietnamese, by the way. It's a nail salon, but in the back, there's like a prostitution ring. And what I need you to do is to take this clean cash money that's coming in from the prostitution thing and help me make it look like, I need you to help me find an accountant who will make the books look like this cash business is coming from the pedicure operation and not from the backyard blowjobs. Like, that's what I need you to do. Can you help me out with that? That's a way different thing than trying to figure out how to deal with a crime that you are currently committing. And what Trump is doing is asking for, let's like hypothetically take,
or even
the
not
argument,
a crime you're committing,
right? But let's take the state's position. Let's take the state's position and say, even if Trump illegally has these documents, okay? Like, and I don't think so. I've already kind of voiced my opinion of his powers here. But let's say, okay, we'll take the state's position that he illegally had these documents. He calls up his attorney. He says, hey, I got these boxes of documents that, I asked them to move a couch. They moved all these boxes and they said it was a couch, very bad, unskilled labor, probably should have closed the border while I was in office. And so he does this. He's got these boxes and he's like, what do I do with them? Do I have legal liability? That's not asking for collusion from the attorney to participate in a criminal scheme. That's asking how you deal with a potential criminal problem or find out if you even have one. Those conversations are supposed to be protected. Those are the most protected conversations because that's why you have an attorney. So I think they've got a big privilege problem. That's a big part of what Will Scharf was talking about and why I want to interview him is this piercing of privilege. An improper piercing of privilege should kill the case, and we should all want it to. Kohlberger's lawyers are actually filing a motion to challenge the indictment on not on a piercing of privilege, but on a withholding of exculpatory evidence from a grand jury. And we want them to let the murderer go free if they violated constitutional rights to indict the murderer. In the same way, I don't care how illegal what Trump did was, if they improperly pierce attorney-client privilege, the government must be punished as harshly as possible by making the charges go away and making them look like fools to the public. It must happen. And if it doesn't, we're in huge trouble.
Amen.
When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for a battle to commence. I told King George he could eat a fat dick.
Happy July 4th. Well, we figured for July 4th, we'd actually bring to you something that most people have never read and only heard little bits and pieces of it, and that's an actual reading of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and our nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind require that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consented of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. When a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariable the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for the future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governor to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right intestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies and placed unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them in compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasion on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such discussions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither and raise the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out of their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretend offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with powers to legislate for us all in cases whatsoever. He has abdicated governance here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coast, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstance of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has contained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear the arms against their country, to become the executioner of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrection amongst us, and he has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice, of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separations and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Signed for Georgia, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton. For Maryland, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll of Carrollton. Delaware, Cecil Rodney, George Reed, Thomas McKean. Massachusetts, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne, Elbridge Gerry. North Carolina, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn. Virginia, George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton. New York, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, Lewis Morris. Rhode Island, Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery. South Carolina, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., Arthur Middleton. New Jersey, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkin, John Hart, Abraham Clark. Connecticut, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, Oliver Wolcott. Massachusetts, John Hancock. Pennsylvania, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Roche. New Hampshire, Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple, Matthew Thornton. Have a great 4th of July, and never forget the men who signed an open letter to the King, risking their lives, their fortune, and their honor. Thanks for watching. Have a great 4th of July. Celebrate the freedoms of America. Do it safely, and we'll see you back here next week. Have a great holiday.
Our legal system was founded to be different than England. We are a reactionary system that's like, no, you did it this way. We don't want to do it that way. We don't like that. And you have fundamental rights, even if you're not popular, even if the court of public opinion hates you, even if you're Jeffrey Dahmer, you still have constitutional rights. Not to compare Eric Khadrowdy to Jeffrey Dahmer, but when it comes to unpopular defendants who we can all agree suck, he's a non-controversial, we can all agree that you suck, in my mind. So with that, you still have rights.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but your constitutional rights don't stop because people die. In fact, your constitutional rights exist through people dying because they're rights, not privileges, not licenses, not grants from the government. They're rights given to you by God, nature's God, by the creator, by Vishnu, by Arby's. It doesn't matter who gave you the rights. You have them by very merit of your birth, by surviving the abortion mill, you spewing yourself out down your mom's natural slip and slide. Suddenly you get all these rights, and you get them no matter what. That's the one thing that separates America from everywhere else on the damn planet, is that you made it out. You made it out. You kicked your way past those labia and you fell out into the earth screaming. And because of that, we go, yeah, this guy did it. This guy made it. Now he gets to speak. He gets a gun if he wants one. We can't put soldiers in his house. He has a right to security in his persons, property, and papers. He has the right to due process. We can't just kill him or lock him up. He has a right to an attorney because if we try and kill him and lock him up, someone smarter than his dumbass who got in that situation gets to argue on his behalf. Those things we give them. We don't even give them to you. We just recognize that they exist because you made it out. You got out of that uterine prison. Let's go full men's rights here. You busted out of that uterus jail. And so you get these things. You survived Planned Parenthood. You made it. Doesn't matter at this point. You could be abandoned. You could be adopted. You could be sold into some sort of trafficking and escape. Anything that you're going to get those rights. You're going to have them. They were instilled in you. They're woven into your DNA. USA does that, or at least it did. At least it's supposed to. And it does that no matter how many people die, no matter how many old people you cough on or whatever, you get to keep that. Because if you don't get to keep that, then you never had it in the first place.
Freedom isn't free. It's hard fought. Yep. And it's quick lost. And once lost, very difficult to regain.
America, fuck yeah! Freedom is the only way.
Ellie Fan says, F you redcoats. Happy 4th, America.